I couldn't garden without DIGA, Disabled Independent Gardeners Association.
The whole mission for DIGA is to allow people with disabilities to garden. We currently tend to over 10 community gardens across Vancouver.
It's all wheelchair accessible, which means on the sidewalk level, there's no stairs or steps or anything to get in.
And usually there are 1 to 2 gardeners that go to the plots pretty regularly.
Volunteers that have come out have been great people and friends.
They're doing all the picking, they're doing all the seeding, they're doing all the weeding.
It allows them to find like a sense of belonging in the community.
People can't believe how I get out and am independent.
These are the stories
My little girl, she's changing lives just by being herself.
of organizations and people making a difference.
When you first tell someone about adaptive wheelchair boxing, it doesn't sound real.
And empowering others
It saved my life. It saved my life.
across Canada
I scored my first goal in my first blind hockey game.
in our community.
My name is Maureen DeLandreville. The primary thing in my apartment that people notice is the artwork. I have a wall unit full of sculptures, either given to me or purchased in other countries. Some years ago, around when I was 70, I realized you become invisible. It's as if you don't exist. People don't know you. I mean, people don't even look at you. You're just old, and old is nothing in this society. And I decided then to have this blue put in my hair. There's 2 colors, a color blue and a color turquoise, to say I'm not dead yet. That's my statement, and it works. I get compliments every time I go out, and I get compliments from young people. So they see me. I want to inspire younger people to become the best they can be. That's my only purpose in life. Now it's 32 years since I broke my neck. Over the years, I've lost function more and more. I'm a C4-5 incomplete. The main thing that got me out of this dislike of being a person, a quadriplegic, was the accessibility in Vancouver, and then primarily DIGA. With the garden, I have more control. It's my garden. Pay $15 a year for a box, thank goodness, because gardening's expensive, especially the first few years. I love what DIGA offers for completing my life. When I joined them, I had a way to manage these gardens. I can't garden. I don't ever even touch a spade. I can't do any of those things, and it's all volunteers from DIGA.
My name is Keith Mann. I'm the summer program assistant for DIGA. We're in the entrance to the Cottonwood Community Garden. Maureen is actually one of the gardeners I started working with this year.
Our relationship is developing. He's willing and helpful and catches on really quickly, smart, and he's turning himself into a gardener with my help, who's not that much of a gardener herself.
Her plot, out of all the other plots I've been to, is actually the busiest, I'd say. There's quite a lot of stuff going on in her plot.
I feel really good about Keith because twice he's been there. Between the 2 of us, we've done some really good planting, and even we've already harvesting a number of items.
We had a pretty big pea harvest, which was quite special since it was the first harvest out of all our gardens this year, and it's nice to see that we're actually producing some produce that we can actually eat.
We're tidying up this bed. We want to harvest a bunch of that kale. Maybe we can start doing that while we're here. And Keith has harvested kale lots.
Getting the biggest, the branches with the biggest leaves, but I'm also trying not to get every single one because I do want to leave some just so the kale plant could regrow, and we could continually harvest them throughout the season. So right now, I'm just getting the ones with the biggest leaves.
The thing is, we're picking the kale when it's still quite a baby. It's soft. We'll be able to put it in a salad. If we let it get bigger, it will be suitable only for cooking.
I grew up in Hong Kong for my entire life, and me and my family moved back to Canada for university. I discovered DIGA last year. Coincidentally, my grandma also built a garden at my uncle's place, so I thought that gardening at DIGA might be a good chance to just learn more stuff to help around the house. My relationship with my grandma has always been, we get along pretty well. She's been dealing with depression for the past few years. So that's one of the main reasons we built a garden at my uncle's place, is just to get her out of the house. From what I learned from volunteering with DIGA, it allowed me to just be more knowledgeable in helping her get the garden started. Gave me some time to just interact with my grandma, since I guess throughout high school, I sort of lost that connection with her. The day one process of starting with DIGA is to just get the plot ready. So this would include fertilizing the soil and also maybe spreading some mulch over it so it could tent the water better. And we usually ask the gardeners to choose some couple of starts that they want to plant with, since we usually start later in the season around May or June, which is quite late relatively to start from seed. So we do recommend gardeners to just buy some starter plants. And once we get those planted into the soil, we also have a variety of seeds to choose from. So we usually just fill out the plot by planting those in. That's usually how we kickstart the garden, and afterwards it's just some regular maintenance until harvesting.
Robert Ferguson. I'm in a one-bedroom apartment, got a saxophone in the background, an alto sax and a tenor sax. Two passions that have really been front and center in my life have been playing the saxophone and gardening. I could go to any community garden plot and, there would be a raised garden bed, but then, you're not working directly with other members of the disabled community, and so there's a social aspect to it as well, and sort of a common culture. My wheelchair basically is just like an extension of my body, and that's sort of the way I look at it. It's an apparatus, it's a machine, but it's also part of who I am. It's simply an avenue of mobility and an ability for me to extend my body into the world. I know one of the things that drives me sort of crazy is I push myself and I'm going up a hill and I'm getting older now, and being in a chair. It's always been a particular issue with me when somebody would grab the back of my wheelchair and automatically push you up the hill and not give any recognition or cognition that this is a part of your body and that they're just grabbing you and pushing you up the hill without any reflection on that. So I can go into my garden, and no matter what kind of day I've had, if I'm working in there for a period of time, then most of my ills and anxiety issues that I might be going through would just disappear. It really, I think in some ways it sort of saved me, got me through really a very difficult, hard couple of years. I had therapy and I went through therapy, but if it wasn't for, hands-on gardening and as often as I was, I probably would not have made it through. The process of working in the gardens and working with DIGA is part of that.
Our community will return after the break. We now return to our community.
Me, Maureen, and Robert are at the corner of one of the DIGA plots at Cottonwood Community Garden. You're surrounded by a lot of plants that are thriving, and there's quite a lot of just cotton kind of flying around the place, but overall it's just like a pretty nice day to just be out in the gardens.
Robert and I found out we both have farming background.
Yeah.
What's interesting is the variance in the farming.
Our job as kids was to go up and pick the fruit for a lot of the people coming in, and we take it over to the weigh scales, and then we would weigh it for them, and then we just price accordingly based on that.
And so what does DIGA, how has DIGA?
Well, DIGA is wonderful because it sort of keeps me back grounded, in a natural environment. Working with earth, working with nature, right? Being with nature. And then also the healing process that is involved. If I hadn't been gardening and it wasn't for therapy of gardening, I don't think I would have got through. Seriously.
Oh my gosh, that's
I went to therapy, but therapy just wasn't even enough. I think it sort of saved my life.
That is incredible, Robert. Thank goodness for DIGA.
Yeah, gardening is pretty therapeutic, I'd say.
Me, DIGA has just brought me back to the earth.
In between planting and harvesting usually is around 2 to 3 months. So within that period, we usually arrange a volunteer to meet up with our gardeners every week and during those weeks, we would ensure that the plants that are just germinating are receiving enough water. And also for plants that tend to grow pretty big, for example, like tomatoes, just to do some pruning. When we first start to plant the seeds, since not every seed is guaranteed to germinate, we usually plant in a lot of clusters. And in the event that a lot of them sprout, we would usually encourage our gardeners to just thin them out and just space out the plants so each plant has their own space to grow and won't cover other plants. And yeah, so it's usually just pruning, thinning, and just watering.
The gardening community is quite a small community anyway. And the disabled gardening community is even smaller. So you really do get to know people on a more intimate level.
Being disabled has opened up so many avenues for contact. I need help for everything. And so I meet all these wonderful people that are just walking down the street, and we have these short engagements, but they're friendly, and you have a friend relationship, even though it's just quick and passing. I love that about having a disability and about community. It's forming a little community, and gardening certainly is a community. All the people that we've gotten to know each other, and then off season we'll run into each other on the sidewalk and say hi and stuff like that.
When you're working with other people in a community, there are no differences in culture, in race, anything else, right?
Exactly.
Like you're just people working with nature in a garden.
Yeah.
That brings almost like a synthesis and a joining of a relationship, a joining of minds that's hard to achieve anywhere else.
And the commonality is working in the garden. And for me, it's DIGA, because without it, I could not be gardening. DIGA is essential for me to connect back to the aspect of gardening, to the dirt, to the beginnings of my life as a farmer and a childhood, and it's all brought together thanks to DIGA and the gardens.
My name is Larry Egan. I'm garden coordinator for the building Kelly Court. I've tried to make it where anyone who's in a wheelchair, they've got a raised bed so that they can get their chair under it and do their gardening. All of our gardens, we have 8 big box down to the ground ones, and then we have another 6 raised garden beds. We've also managed to get a water system in that is more centrally located so that people can actually water their own gardens.
My name is Elizabeth Perron, and I grew up in Ontario on a farm, and then my parents grew pickles for Bix. In 2015, I moved out here to Vancouver after I met my husband. My husband used to be really quiet, and I think joining DIGA, he met more people. He learned how to garden and get outdoors more, and I think it was really good. You know, I just enjoy gardening because you get to dig in the dirt. And now with digging, you know, I still enjoy it with the raised beds because I can still reach, you know, and do the gardening, and I'm able to stand and do a little bit. When my parents were doing the pickle farming, I enjoyed it because I could be on the ground, and I wasn't disabled at that point, so I could be on the ground and pick the cucumbers. And now that I'm with DIGA, I can still do the gardening. He asked me if I wanted to be on the board of DIGA. Thought it was a good idea. I feel really excited about the first meeting, and I get to meet a lot of people I haven't met before. So when I come out to the garden, what I do is I usually take the tools and I usually work with it. But most of the daily activity right now is watering the garden. In the garden, there's tomato plants, there's impatiens, there's marigold plants, we got beans along the one edge and peas along the one edge, and there's carrots and beets just starting. So a lot of the plants in the garden are still at the beginner stage because they've only been planted for about a month. Yeah, well, these are tomato plants, and that is a marigold plant, and that's impatient plants. And back at the back, we've got peas, and we got beans at the other side. Starting to get a few beets. coming up, and there's a few carrots coming up. My favorite thing to plant is cucamelons. They taste sort of between cucumber and watermelon.
I try to plant crops that I could actually use. I like tomatoes. I grow a lot of tomatoes. I've always grown tomatoes.
And a tomato picked from a plant is another being. I don't care how good a tomato you buy, that is going to be as good as these. Super delicious, especially right off the garden.
You actually feel like you're eating something nutritious. You're biting into something which is fresh, it's succulent. And then the pleasure of just knowing that all the work you put into it is paid off.
Our community will return after the break. We now return to our community.
I'm in a one-bedroom apartment right now. I'm just going to go out and get the cucumbers and get ready to have my recipe with tzatziki. On the far right on the end, we have our cucumbers, and there's some huge cucumbers. Massive cucumbers, actually. I think I'm gonna get this one here, actually, because they're so big now, they've got to be picked. I'm going to peel the cucumber and take the internal seed sections of pulp out of it, and then I will grate the cucumber and then the Greek yogurt here. So I'm going to be using 1 cup of Greek yogurt for half a cup of the grated cucumber. And then there's dill weed here, fresh dill weed. And then I've got lemon juice, and then there's garlic here. So I'll put 1 or 2 cloves of garlic in there as well. And then I've got olive oil. So use 2 tablespoons, just mix it up. Mix it up quickly, but just you want to fold it over. This is tzatziki. It's grated pita bread. You can have it with meats, put it with any kind of breads, toast. So I'm just going to take a little bit of tzatziki and just spoon like half a teaspoon of tzatziki on the pita bread. Just like that. And then fold it over. And enjoy. Cheers. Very nice.
We're at the Granville Temporary Community Garden.
My little garden, which is 2 boxes in an open plot that will eventually be developed, is half a block from my home. It's absolutely delightful. I can see my apartment from here. The boxes are raised and they're wood with metal frames on the corners for attachment. I have beautiful, ready romaine lettuces which need harvesting.
So as of right now, mostly what we've been harvesting are vegetables like lettuce and peas. Harvesting right now is just partially harvesting whatever is, well, ready, but towards the end of the season, we will harvest the entire plant since the water shuts off. We didn't expect it, but Robert's garden actually ended up giving a lot of carrots. I think it was around 60 or so. Usually at some of our gardens, we tend to leave in some plants that are good for over the winter. So like carrots, potatoes. When we start the season next year, there's like a pleasant surprise. Most of the DIGA gardeners are of the older generation, but there's still quite a big difference between like DIGA gardeners and like my grandparents at home, since, well, my grandparents are pretty traditional. Like what they say tends to be very rigid and strict, but they want some sort of future in me, and they just keep pushing me to do like certain careers and stuff. But honestly, I'd say like from volunteering with DIGA from last year, it has taught me to just be more open to things in life, to be more personal. I struggled a lot with academic stress. Volunteering with DIGA was like a major stress outlet for me, especially since I got to take a break from courses and just come out here in the gardens and just not think about anything.
Make you think of getting into something that's more prescriptive with nature?
I've actually always joked with my family that I want to become like a farmer or like just live off grid somewhere because I'm just tired of like the city life.
Keith has brought a useful energy into learning. Keith's gardening acumen was not particularly developed when he started, and it's still got a ways to go, but it's growing, and it's fun working with people with that kind of attitude and desire.
DIGA for me is a place to just relax and take my mind off of things that I'm stressed about and realize that it's not that big of a deal at the end of the day.
DIGA to me has been a lifeline. It has continued to help me grow and to be a better person. It's taught me values. It's taught me a lot of, nature teaches you values, teaches you patience, perseverance, right?
Yeah.
I think the general public, they don't think that people with disabilities can get out and do stuff.
Perspectives on what a disability meant, say, 40 years ago is probably very different than it is now.
I view disability as less of a barrier, but rather it's just something that requires more adapting to. I think disability allows people to grow and demonstrate a lot of strength by just coming to terms with their conditions and still being able to stay involved with something like DIGA.
Over the years, it's increased every year, my appreciation for having broken my neck, how that's enriched my life dramatically. And that's, you make really close connections. And, I grow to love them, and I think they love me back. It's just all these experiences I'd never have if I didn't need help all the time, because my life is so much richer, so much broader. I'm born with the glass half full, and my life has made the glass flowing over.
Director, Jasper Viant. Producer, Rachel Ransom. Editor, Jasper Viant. Cinematographer, Lon Gross. Executive producer, Ryan Ma. Post-sound mixer, Dave Chick. Colorist, Richard Tran. Narrator, Mark Phoenix. Integrated Described Video Consultant, Ron Rickford. Supervising Producer, Jennifer Johnson. Director, Programming, Lizanne Gagne. Director, Content Development and Production, Kara Nye. President and CEO, David Arrington. Copyright 2024, Accessible Media, Inc.
An AMI original production.